How you going, Mr. Marty Bright?
Hey,
It's a pleasure to have you here on the Works It Out podcast.
it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming along and sitting down in the lovely chair that I've got.
It's my first time in your little man cave.
I don't know if I'm comfortable with the term man cave because
Yeah, I can see you not wanting to subscribe to something that's been hijacked by douchebags.
all genders are welcome. And
People cave.
And also, yeah, that's
People lair.
human cave.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do understand the notion, and I'm very lucky to have a space like this because spaces are super important.
Yeah,
A
definitely.
lot of people who don't have the luxury of having their own space.
That extra room in the house, it's all like
That's
maxed out.
Yeah, particularly for a particular purpose. So, like,
Yeah.
you know, here in this space, I have music equipment. I obviously can do this podcast, and I can read it quietly. And so it's very nice to have a dedicated space to hanging out with yourself. If you have a creative practice. Anyway, that's not necessarily why I'm here.
Rumpus? Do you like the term rumpus?
I do enjoy the term rumpus room.
Yeah.
I really think that
It sounds playful.
it's very underappreciated.
Do you rump?
I do.
Do you rump in that room?
Yeah, you have to, right? You have to. So, Mr. Bright, you're a poet and a comedian and an organizer of events.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we've known each other for quite some time,
Yeah.
I guess. And I guess one of the reasons why I wanted to chat to you is because you are a very talented and aspiring comedian, and I think we share a lot of similar interests in music. We've performed together, and it's great to talk to someone who has a unique mind. Oh, that's all right.
Nearly dropped the mic in the tea. I would have been banned from the podcast.
No, that's okay. We've got backups, and also everything's insured because I'm just a nerd.
Yep.
So no need to worry. Don't worry.
Everything's insured.
Yeah, that's
That
right.
makes the rumpus room sound a bit more lame.
I think you need to be insured against rumpus because if
Yeah.
you're rumping around,
It's a special rumpus
particularly
insurance.
if you're, I mean, this gear isn't cheap, so
Yep.
you know you want to make sure it's taken care of.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's
Anyway, you were saying nice things about me. Go on.
I was saying nice things about you, which is that you're a poet and comedian, and you're interested in music, and you've got an excellent backstory in terms of, you know, your creative. I don't know if excellent backstory is the right phrase, but because I don't really know the backstory of your, like, why did you decide to become a comedian? How did you get into it?
I think I've always loved. You know what? It started when, no matter how little money I had when I was a kid, my mum could always afford full Foxtel. So it meant that back in the 90s, when you couldn't actually watch that much stand-up and that many, like, you know, American sitcoms, I always had like Comedy Channel and like all the channels that I essentially could watch, you know, good quality stand-up and American, UK comedy shows on TV all the time, even when I was like the age of like 10 or 12. And then I was also, yeah, like I was the type of kid that would, you know, if there was other kids around the house, I would take them into a room away from where all the adults were, having like an adult get together, and we'd like do a show. We'd do a little production, and there'd be like babies coming out with like pans on their heads, and like I'd be like the little director. And so I always had like a passion for like making stuff happen and entertaining. And then, yeah, it was just like a loose something I was procrastinating about for ages. And then my mum bought me a spot in a weekend workshop, which was a comedy workshop at a stand-up comedy club. And then, you know, they teach you the tidbits and all the basics of like writing jokes and all the industry stuff. And then you do a graduation with your friends and family in the audience. The best way to start a comedy career is just everyone going, yay, and just making you deluded how good you are. So that then it gets you through all the really hard gigs you're about to follow. But yeah, that's how I got pushed over the edge of procrastination, is someone paid money for me for a gift. And I was like, oh, I better go. And I was like, oh, I'm actually, you know, I think I'm more I think I'm more lean towards being overly. I'm really humble. No, but it was like I considered myself a humorous person, but I was I loved the art form so much. It was almost like I didn't want to start because I didn't want to do it unless I was great straight away. But then once I did the course, I realized I do have a bit of natural ability, but then I also learned from the guys, like from the comedians teaching it, that, you know, it's a process and you're only going to get better once you start. And you know, just like any art form, you know, you just got to put yourself in the mix and put, you know, not fail, but put yourself in positions where you can like learn, like boot camp, like.
Oh man, failing is super important. I would use the word fail. I mean,
you would?
Yeah, totally. Because I don't think you should be afraid of it. I think that, you know, when any artist is starting out, part of it is going to be, you're going to do terrible gigs. You're going to disappoint yourself with how you perform, probably. And you're going to be disappointed with how, you know, how many people show up, all those kinds of things, and the way you're received. And I feel like there's this real tension for performers, which is that you are in this battle with your ego to understand the role that it plays in why you want to do it.
Definitely.
And whether you can convert that into like an act of service. Because my experience was when I was young, I don't consider myself super old, but I was younger when I was younger. And I was just starting out with music. The perception is in your own mind that, you know, it's only worth doing if you make it. And you have this kind of weird idea of like what making it means in terms of a, like...
Yeah, the big Hollywood,
yeah,
like...
exactly. Like you're you know, in
my big break.
Yeah. You're like in some kind of scene.
Is it my close-up?
Yeah. You're in some kind of scene from that Gaga movie. I'm forgetting what it's like. A Star Is Born.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you imagine some kind of epic trajectory where you're discovered, and then as that kind of doesn't happen, you start to realize, oh shit, well, like, why am I doing this, and is it worth it, and should I stop? I remember once I decided, okay, well, you know, I've played enough lame gigs or whatever. It doesn't seem like anyone's going to be picking me up. Like as
like if it was going to happen in that storybook way, it would have happened by now. So else? What's my alternate kind of trajectory?
I tried quitting music for like a 3-month period.
You wouldn't have done well at that.
No, it was awful. So I just was like, okay, so I'm no longer trying to be a muso. I'm no longer doing music, and I was just miserable. I became so miserable because
it sounds like the dad that coaches his kid's soccer team. He's like, he's given up playing, but he's like
Well, it's just
do it.
It's just so strange because, in certain ways, people who don't have creative ambitions, if you have them internally and you can't kind of get rid of them, there's no exorcism for them except by doing it. When it does possess you like that in this strange and inexplicable way, people who can just simply go to work and then when they're finished, not have like an extra identity they're trying to pursue, that actually kind of looks appealing. If you aren't doing well at it, you know, if you haven't found your place and your path, because I remember I was, you know, I know what you mean. Yeah. I was like living in a share house, and you know, I'm going to work like everybody else, like all the other housemates, except when I would get home, I would be like, okay, now is my. I
got half an hour to get ready for my gig.
Now is my time to like, you know, produce music, and it'd be all frustrating because I don't have time and space properly, and I didn't know how to organize gigs. I didn't know how to book them, all that sort of stuff. I hadn't learned anything about that side of it yet, and so I would get home and kind of be in this like struggle to try. Well,
it's your second life.
Yeah, and this struggle to kind of manifest this part of myself. And I was just had no idea. There's no, unfortunately, there probably is like a music workshop, like how to start. I've never done any of that. And part of that is because there's like some weird mythology around music that I've absorbed, which is just that like the industry is awful and super exploitative, and so you should avoid it at all costs and just forge your own paths, just like Kurt Cobain. You know, it's something like that. You're like,
it's like a martyrdom.
Yeah. Like all the people who are famous and have cultivated this image of like not being slaves to the music industry, like they all had agents and managers and stuff. It's just they didn't seem like they did, and so because of that, there's this idea that you shouldn't partake. Well, this is something that I absorbed.
Yeah,
that like you shouldn't partake, and so I've always had this relentless DIY aspect and attitude, even when I didn't know how that worked, and then I now do, and now I've been organizing warehouse shows for years, and I contribute to lots of events that aren't like mainstream or whatever.
Yeah.
But, that's the funny thing is that if you have something that you don't want to give up, that's part of your identity, you need some kind of ego in order to begin performing in the first place. But if you're a slave to it and its demands, then you kind of don't get anywhere. You need to find a way, I think, to realize and to convert it into an act of service. That's, I think, the turning point.
Yeah.
Where the reason that you're getting good at it is that you can do something for people, not for yourself.
Well, that's interesting because now that you're talking about people's not necessarily misconceptions, but people's perceptions of like entertainment going into it. Because I hear you say, I hear what you say that, and then I start to think about my own perspective, and I was like, oh, like my father is like an ARIA Hall of Fame musician, so not as a name drop, but just as like I've always grown up around someone who there's no pearly gates, like we live in Ryde. Like we live in the suburbs, like, the guys of his era, not a lot of them who came out of that like 80s kind of thing are actually like have houses or like own anything. Like they just thought it was going to last forever. And then it all just faded once the internet came. But my father's musical project and his ability to do like production and work on other people's stuff and give his experience with service, I've always really looked up to my dad in that way because he's able to be an authentic artist and express himself as an individual in his projects, but also make it viable. And I don't think I realized how much of that I absorbed as a kid until I started comedy, because I was like, for example, I was really comfortable backstage. Other people are like, oh, do we talk? Like, who do we, da-da-da. And I was like, well, I was backstage at the fucking, I don't know, Enmore Theatre at 5 years old with bloody like headphones on being like, can we go home? It's a Wednesday night. Like, like sitting on an amp for like 2 hours just watching people talk. And so it's funny that just like those type of subliminal experiences end up paving how comfortable you are in certain situations, and what you were saying about like your ego and then converting that, hopefully your ego at some point, the ego of look at me, tell me I'm good, tell me I'm fantastic, decides to rest, or that gets balanced out with what am I giving, what am I saying, and that for me is what I've realized a lot with like branching out into music and spoken word, is I found like a voice for myself that I just think because of the medium of like spoken word and music, sincerity is a lot more, sincerity is received a lot better.
In music, you think?
In music and poetry, people expect for people to be sincere, and if you're being sarcastic, then, or you have a tone of like playfulness, people go, oh, these guys are fun, like, hey, it's a cat empire, like, woo. But like, but so for me, I always felt like, I don't know if you agree, but I always felt like as a comedian, I've always been sincere. Like I don't ever feel like I'm being sarcastic or I'm being a character. I'm just like almost embellishing on thoughts I actually have. And then once I did spoken word and I got even deeper into those things, like how do I feel about my sexuality? How do I feel about spirituality? How do I feel about my family relationships and all this stuff? And I actually expressed it, and people were like, we love that. Now when I go back to my comedy, I won't accept anything less than me being able to fully express myself. So now it's been able to now it's meant that I've kind of got this, I'm moving towards this kind of like hybrid of spoken word and comedy, and it's essentially like I'm a vehicle for the vibe, not necessarily the medium. Like I'm a comedian and I'll always be. It's like I'll put out whatever's coming through me at whatever time. And just today, actually, when I was in the aquatic centre, I went for a swim, and I was in the spa. $16 I paid for the extra spa pass. Right Aquatic Centre, shout out. And 2112. Just me and all like the 80-year-old, like all the like 80-year-old like Chinese. There's a lot of Chinese people in Ride, and it's like pretty much only me and all these like elderly Chinese people in the spa. And I feel like they've warmed to me because I always sit close to the button, and when it turns off, they always just kind of open their eyes, look at me, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when I was in the spa and I had my eyes closed, I came up with this thing that I'm actually you're the first person I've told, and the first time I've said it out loud. So I'm actually going to start offering, just to see how it goes and see if anyone takes anything from it, but I'm going to call them, I haven't come up with the name yet, but it's like, we call it like creative guidance. So like particularly aimed towards the people that are, maybe haven't fully stepped into having that creative thing as the thing that they want to incorporate into their life. Actually, because I've got a background in education and like community development and youth work, and I've taught the comedy schools myself. So now I want to kind of offer people a chance to have like one-on-one time where we can actually try and like sculpt out a bit of a vision of how they can move their life towards a better, not work-life balance, a better like life-art balance.
Yeah. I think those three are intent. They're not what's the word for tandem that's three? They're tripartite, like work, art, life, balance. I feel, you don't need to necessarily identify as an artist, but having a creative practice, really the kind of practice that I think is essential, doesn't even need to be artistic in the sense of self-identified as such, but really the core of it for me is simply that you have a practice in your life that doesn't require some kind of like overarching subscription or like permission from other people in order for it to happen. So a great example is gardening. Like if you have a house with green space, you can, with your efforts, convert that into something that is
you can grow weed.
fruitful, serving the people.
I think it's like the, if I don't know about the biology of the brain, but I suppose if very simple way, there was a certain part of all our brains that is activated through this creative state of being.
Oh, do you want to hear my theory on this?
Well, I'm sure you know more about it than I do.
I don't. No. It's not that I know.
I'm just saying, like, if it's gardening or whatever it is, if that is the part that's going beep beep, for you it might be gardening, for me it might be swimming or whatever it is. It's like just whatever gets that section having little electrodes. Electrodes, that's probably wrong too.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, go on.
No, it's okay.
We don't have any academic people listening.
My theory about art in general is that art and creativity is like a form of human plumage, right? So in those beautiful birds of paradise that you see in the jungles and those Attenborough documentaries, they have incredible plumage and they do incredible dances. They're like clean a section of...
Here we have the...
Yeah. And those birds that manifest these, within their species, these like ridiculous displays.
They've gone like...
Yeah. And they'll like puff out all these crazy different colours and feathers and do cool dances.
Yeah.
And so effectively what that is like an expression of sexual selection. And it's usually the males of the species who have got this urge to display their sexual fitness to the females. And then they do these elaborate displays, elaborate dances, and effectively
Do a tight five comedy set.
yeah. And then the ladies are like, well, I don't know if I'm into that or
Yo, what's the deal with these lions? Just chill the fuck out already.
But basically, my theory is not to put a heavy emphasis on the male aspect of it, but that those behaviors and like those particular species emerge where there's tons of abundance. Like it's in jungles where there's food everywhere, and so simply being alive and looking healthy is not a particularly attractive trait.
You got to have something extra.
You got to have all this extra shit.
You have to peacock.
That's right. So, because clearly there's enough food. Like the fact that you're healthy and
You're dancing around like this. You're not worried that when you finish your dance that there's going to be none left for you.
Exactly. And so, I feel like there's some kind of I don't know if its genesis is in fact sexual or it's some kind of like manifestation of our genome or something that just needs to find expression when the basic needs are fulfilled. There's extra energy available to put on these displays. And so that's my theory about culture, art, everything that humans do that's extraneous to survival and is creative in some way, in my opinion, is some kind of manifestation that's similar to the strangeness of these birds. Like we look at these birds, we look at these birds and go like, "Whoa, isn't that crazy and weird?" Or they do some things that they do,
and then we get dressed up and go out to the bar and be like, "Do I look good tonight?" Oh, hello.
Well, some of the things that they do are frighteningly similar to our stuff. So there's I think it's in the new Planet Earth that's on Netflix. Where there's like a whole cadre of birds. There's like one bird that's trying to get with a female, but there's like he's got three friends and they all do like a choreographed dance together where they like jump over each other and they all like have a little go, but then there's like the one
like
bird
Backstreet Boys,
the one bird, yeah, exactly, the one bird that's trying to make it. Or it's like the other thing that it's very similar to is like those wedding videos where the groom and the best men all dance around, and so it's frightening how similar those things are recognized. It's like not only is he demonstrating the health and fitness himself by doing all these dance moves, but he's demonstrating that he's capable of organizing and rehearsing with three other dudes who are also fit. So it's like, imagine how fit this guy is, that not only is they're not even trying
to rival him.
Yeah, that's
they're
right.
just like,
exactly.
We'll do what you say,
Yes.
Alpha Bird.
Yes, exactly.
What is it? Step, shimmy, shimmy?
That's right. And so the idea being that if you've got enough social capital that you can organize like three other equally fit dudes to coordinate with you, assuming that there's going to be a quid pro quo later, I'm assuming the other birds are like, you better also be in my like dance troupe when I'm trying to get my end in. I assume that that's part of the deal. Sure.
Yeah.
But effectively, that's kind of my theory about it. Is not that this is any kind of claim to biological truth.
Yeah, you got the bird experts writing in now. Like, well, actually, I think you'll find that the plumage is.
I would love it if I got some bird blowback.
Get the bird. You don't want me. Get the bird experts. That'll be far more interesting.
No, well, that's that. I dispute that. I dispute that, Marty. And so you've got not only as this backstory where you have a father who was interested in and pursued music successfully, but I think you've realized that.
By the way, I believe successfully, from what I've seen and learned from him, is not just the bottom line. When I look at him and say he's successful, I look at him and think he has grounded relationships with his family, and he is financially comfortable enough that he's, doesn't have to stress about that to the point where it's, consumes him, and he's creatively fulfilled as an individual as well. And he has friendships and, that's balance, as opposed to being like, my dad's successful. And he's like shitting and crying on his golden toilet.
No. That's an important thing to clarify. But what I was going to get to was, how do you see your path forward? I know one thing that you're doing is, so you're talking about being able to offer these creative mentorship type experiences. But also the things that you're doing are, you run Words Flow, which is a lovely spoken word night.
Yep.
And you also run Surry Hills Comedy Club, And so what role has becoming a facilitator, not just a performer, played in the way you conceive of your own, act performances and service?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I go in waves. I'm like, I want to organize things. And then after a year of organizing things, like I just want to be an artist. And then after a year of being an artist, like, I got to give back. And then I just keep going in these swings. I'm trying to find a bit of a constant balance of it. I think I enjoy, you know what it is? I enjoy the facilitation, as in when the event's on, and greeting people and hosting it and curating it. And I don't enjoy promotion and Facebook algorithms. I don't enjoy that side of things. Yeah, like I spent like an hour doing like, all these like paid promotions and algorithms, and I feel like I'm very like empathetic person. I feel like I start to empathize with the robots. After an hour, I'm like, wait, who am I? But yeah, I'm getting better at that stuff. I'm trying to get rid of my resentment towards it so that I can actually move forward and not let it hold me back, which is, I think I'm doing a really good job.
Okay. That's something that I definitely struggle with, because I harbor, it's just the thing that angers me, I suppose, about social media is just it feels like we were sold a false bill of goods. Like the idea behind it of Facebook is simply genius. It's effectively like a visual email, right? Like where instead of simply an address that you fire things into the ether, if you want to communicate with someone by email, it's like you have a string of text and then you shoot things at that and then they send things back to you.
Yeah.
But instead, it's like
clusterfuck.
Well, you can. The genius of it is, instead of having simply like a string of text, you have like a place and a page and a picture of the person, and it's like a place where here's all the stuff they've done recently, and it's like, oh, okay, this is a good idea. This is something that makes sense from a human perspective. When you want to engage with someone, having extra dimensions instead of just like a string and an email, because there's something pure and beautiful about sending letters, which are just text, and that's an art form that's basically been obliterated. But having extra dimensions is a great idea. Yeah. However, when the idea was first kind of coming to prominence with, like, say, MySpace, you had a great deal of customization over how it looked and stuff. So you could like have your MySpace be like
whatever you wanted,
but to the point where there was too much freedom, I think, because a lot of people made some horrific choices.
I never had MySpace. I missed that whole boat.
You missed that, yeah. Well, maybe you're I think you're a bit younger.
I was an MSN Messenger boy.
Yeah, I had that too.
Oh yeah.
We're talking
busy. You're not busy. I know you're on. Get out of here.
Were you on ICQ?
No, my brother was on ICQ. He was
so you're obviously a few years younger, because these trends are like a couple of years and you miss them. Because I was ICQ, and then I did know what MSN Messenger was, but I only had it for a brief period.
Oh man, I was so like a normal Nokia green and black phone.
Yeah.
I could one hand type a message so good, and I wouldn't use dictionary. I would know the perfect timing where you can hit the delete button where it doesn't delete the last word. It just stops the cursor needing to blink 3 times. So I can put a B after an A without having to. I'm just boasting here about
no, for sure.
The one piece of technology I've mastered in my life that is now just completely irrelevant.
3210.
Yeah. That's amazing.
That's an important milestone for.
Yeah, they'll come back soon. They'll be retro soon. Everyone will be like, oh, look at that.
There was a company that resurrected the 3210 and bought the rights from Nokia, who went bust. Yeah, it's steadily a thing. But anyway, the thing about the emergence of the current manifestation of what social media is kind of dates back from. Initially there was MySpace, which you could customize however you liked. However, a lot of people decided and, don't make good design choices. And so the whole thing looked kind of hideous. And then once Facebook came on the scene, and it had like a lot cleaner design, far less customizable. It was like freedom only within certain boundaries. Like you could the things that you could change were specific images, and so now we've come so far that when Instagram started, it was just a square, and that's all, and you just have like a grid design, and all you can change is the content that you put in that frame. And in a certain way, people thrive when there's limitations. When there are limitations.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
And so when all of this stuff was coming in its infancy, I didn't see it as a bad thing, because effectively the trade-off was, if you're a kind of creative person and you are contributing to these networks, the quid pro quo is that you access the audience, and that's fine. And everybody seems to benefit, because
they receive what you've got.
Yeah, that's right. So you are putting things out there into the marketplace of ideas, and the deal seems to be that these companies would advertise next to whatever was happening.
Next to.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And instead of but then clearly the business model was reach a tipping point where
people get addicted so much.
But also it's so the network effect is so huge that effectively they're monopolizing the audience. And now the people who are creative and want to reach people because they're making creative work, or they're...
all the people they want to reach only seek through that medium.
That's right. And so now everybody's there, but mostly because lots of people are putting energy and time and putting good things in there, which make it an interesting place to be. And so it's a multiplier effect. And then they have the gall to like turn the spigot off. So it's like, hey, all of these people who
you accumulated.
Yeah, that's right. Guess what? You can't reach them anymore unless you give us money. And that's the bit that I find despicable.
That's one of the barriers I found, like organising these 2 gigs that I started this year. So for essentially 12 months, I started Surry Hills Comedy Club, which is a weekly comedy club in Sydney on a Tuesday night, hard night to sell, and then Words Flow, which was an open mic spoken word night, which wasn't a slam or a competition, and it was just like about people coming along and sharing what they wanted to share. And there were times when I thought I did build a really good, like I call it like a grassroots following, where all the audience members that are regular, they know me. I've met them, and I genuinely enjoy meeting people, so I'm not being fake,
Of course.
And so when I add them to my mailing list and I send them something, they're like, oh, the thing that the guy that was genuinely interested invited me to, and or like the spoken word night, I had a lot of people who had never performed before, and they felt like it was a really safe space for them to start. So essentially I had a lot of people who only started this year, or like my main group of regulars. And I just started adding people on Facebook as friends instead of like creating this like my page thing, because then the like my page creates a separation. You like, and then I post.
Yeah,
I just decided, no, we're just going to be friends, and I just have stuff that you might want to come to. And, I've been to gigs of people that came to my show, and I found out that they had something to offer. But yeah, I did notice that if you start inviting people to too many things, Facebook says, no, you can only invite 50 people to the next thing.
Yeah, well...
Or less they say, oh, they're trying to push you to the paid promo. But I think considering that there's all that stuff in place, I'm really happy and proud with what I achieved this year with, putting events out there in the current climate of like Sydney nightlife. And so got a gig tomorrow back at the same venue that I do the Surry Hills Comedy Club with this American comedian called Steve Hofstetter.
Yeah, he's the guy who's famous for like crushing
hecklers. So myself and Daniel Muggleton.
Yep.
So we're going to be opening for him at Low 302 tomorrow night.
Dan Muggleton also was he did like what, Mug and Kettle or something?
Yeah, but him and I ran the comedy at the Foresters in Surry Hills, but he actually was just living in the UK for a couple of years.
Yep.
And a couple of months ago he opened for Jim Jeffries over in the Manchester Arena. So he's been
on the up and up.
Yeah, he's been doing real well, and he's living back here, and so yeah, we're going to do that. And then Sunday actually taking Words Flow out of Sydney for the first time and doing my own vibe of spoken word open mic up in Newcastle. at the Lass.
The Lasso Gallery.
Lasso. What a pub.
That's my favorite pub.
Yeah, so I'm going up there and doing a spoken word open mic, and all the donations are going to go to the Hunter Wildlife Rescue. So a volunteer group in the Hunter region who are housing and helping animals up there, which I just thought I wanted to go somewhere real small and like some, an organization I know probably is not getting much.
Yeah.
And that's something I wanted to donate. And then after that, a bit of fun, I'm doing the something I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this, but I run Seinfeld trivia. So now I've got I think we've got 65 people booked in for Seinfeld trivia in the beer garden of the Lass, which is going to be projector.
They have people book?
They emailed me because you want to know how many people are going to turn up so that you can buy prizes and
I get it. But I just am astounded that people have actively put their names down.
People who go to the Lass?
Yeah, no. I'm not surprised at that it's that venue, but just in terms of a trivia night, I associate trivia nights with it's Wednesday night. Do I go to my local trivia night or not? Not I'm going to put my name down for this future trivia.
Well, it's the themed trivias. I was doing those all year as well, like Seinfeld, Simpsons. I did Marvel, and I did 90s, and I did a few other 90s and noughties or something like that. But people, that's something I did this year as well. I just started these trivia nights, and they're pretty they're just a whole bunch of fun. And I think people were getting a little bit stale with the pub trivia. People will come out to the thing they love. People get so competitive.
Oh, for sure. Game of Thrones. I was part of a Game of Thrones trivia, which was
Did people dress up?
No, they didn't dress up, but no, it wasn't that kind of night. But it was viciously competitive. There was cheating for sure. I was looking at other teams cheating, and I was like,
yeah, that's a hard thing in pub trivia. I kind of try and say something real. I try to be real hard at the start, so I don't have to later. If I'm hard in front of everybody, what do I normally say? I'm just I just put the school teacher on and just be like, come on, guys. And I'm like, look, if you've got your phone out, I believe you in advance that you're just texting, but don't turn me into the guy that, someone's going to come up to me and be like, oh, they're texting. And then I'm going to go, were you texting? And they're like, oh, but someone's Googling, someone's Wikipedia-ing. And I think there was one group of people I did catch cheating, but honestly, it's so hard. People are just so addicted to their phones. They just out of impulse, they bring it out.
I feel but see, that's where the trivia that I've gone to with my mates, we've been going, I haven't been for ages, but I don't know, even before we turned 18, we started going to the Commercial Hotel in Balmain, which is where it started. And we went to the trivia, and we've made a lifelong friend. So one of the guys who was...
The host?
No. So, we know the host now.
Trivia
who's a very firm friend. But also just a guy who was at the pub, Pat, would help our team. And,
Slash
we were
answer everything right for you.
Well, yeah, because we were barely 18 when we started. And so he would come and help us with anything that was, beyond the 80s. We were absolutely had no chance. And so he has now become a lifelong friend. We all love him. The land at Kempsey where he owns part of his, he has some property up in Kempsey, and he does an amazing festival that we're part of. And it's just he's an amazing dude. And we've been through pub trivia. Yeah,
great.
And the teams, some of the same teams have been going there for this 10 years.
Yeah.
And at that trivia, you just if you take your phone out, everybody is disgusted. No, you just it's well understood.
Yeah, a lot of the ones I do are one-offs where people probably don't go to that much trivia. So exactly. I got to be a bit. But did you guys always have the same name, or did you rotate?
Yeah, no, we would have the same name, which is Tornamanti.
Tornamanti.
But then Tornamanti, there's a long and sordid backstory.
I'm sure
to the name.
every group of high school friends have got
Yes.
some in-joke that they think is like the most hilarious joke in the world.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
they
yeah.
say it to other people and they're like,
No. That's why I'm not
Yeah.
saying it.
Yeah.
But we would have Tournamanti in the name, and then we would do like elaborate briefs on it. So there was kind of the best of both worlds. Because I think trivia team names, I feel like you could even just have a trivia night where that all you do is reward the best name.
Yeah.
Because some of the names are...
That's pretty much, we do that. We do that at ours. But obviously because they're like themed to certain shows, people always, it's a pun on a character or a pun on a, like the Soup Nazis or, something like that. But yeah, so those are my events coming up.
So you've got your iron in a lot of fires, or fires in...
I've never heard that one before.
Wait. You got that's the thing, right?
That reminds me of a joke that there's a comedian, Bruce Griffiths. He's like an old school one-liner guy, and I'm gonna give him the shout out for his joke because I know that he's very touchy about credit.
Yeah.
It's a one-liner joke. He's like got this real dry delivery. He's like, they say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Who are they? Basket makers trying to shift units.
Yeah. So, I think that busyness is good, as in doing a lot of stuff, doing many things. I think is definitely good for your productivity. When you're making stuff and you restrict yourself and you sort of decide, I'm just gonna focus on this one thing. I find that that's usually been not good for my output. I think being busy, which is
are you like a cabin fever kind of guy? Like,
I just feel like if you are restricting yourself, as you were saying earlier, the fact that you're doing like poetry and spoken word and music is improving your comedy and like feeding back and making changing what you expect from it.
And those are my three artistic outputs for the life experience I'm having. So all the stuff that's coming through my art is all coming from the stuff I'm doing outside of that, which is the stuff I'm doing with my relationships in my family, working on those and actually showing up with the people in my family and working on that and like looking after my body a bit better and my day job, working in the community with people with disabilities and teaching as well. So it's like, there's what? No, my point was, my point was that they are. That was my point. That they're a reflection of what's of the other side of it. Like I think sometimes that is one of the things with social media is like, I generally only post about artistic stuff. I like to kind of keep my personal life personal. So sometimes there can be a bit of a slant, as we know. You bump into someone, and they're like, oh, you're doing so well, after you've had a really rough month. And you're like, oh, really? It's like, well, I saw all the things you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, but those are things I'm doing. Like, I'm still feeling things outside of there. But,
It's a strange alternate reality where people assume, because there are some people, and I'm similar to you, there are people who process their emotions entirely in public on Facebook. And you know this, you would have people in your timeline that are just like, today was really hard, blah, and just like a litany of woe about what they're going through and stuff. Yeah. And that's hard for some people. That's how they deal.
For some people, that's their only option. I think that's something I've realized this year with just like dropping and just starting to be really grateful for my family, because like because I used to have that resentment when I would see someone like, poor grandma just manically, on Facebook or something, just like ranting. I admit it. And I think we've all had those times where we're like, oh, like, why are they doing that? And I'm like, You know what? Because they probably need to.
Yeah,
because they probably need to get that out. Because whatever that is, doesn't look like that would be good to be keeping in.
No, that's true.
But it's the closest.
I'm not saying, I'm certainly not passing judgment.
Yeah, no, you weren't.
It's not passing judgment about individuals, but also what it speaks to for me is that how grateful I am to have healthy outlets for my stuff because, while it's this kind of like, how there's like cultural relativism, I have like personal relativism. So
Sure.
I feel like I'm not judging anyone for doing that, for venting their spleen on Facebook and putting their most intimate thoughts and like their most
Immortalized.
Yeah, their most terrible.
Immortalized for the new world order to prey on.
I don't judge it, but at the same time, I believe that there's a better way, and that's a symptom of a system or a place where it speaks to the fact that you're having to do that and do things online, which is I feel like my thoughts about the internet are simply that it should be used as a tool to facilitate actual conversation. Like, to the extent that the internet is useful in my world, it's a tool to facilitate
real life
getting
interactions.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so
not replace them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not act as like a terrible surrogate, because text is, we're having this conversation now.
We could have, if we tried to text this conversation.
Yeah.
This would be ridiculous.
No, yeah. But even there's like a hierarchy. So face to face is the gold standard.
Yeah.
And then one step below that is a phone
Face
call.
in face is the gold standard.
Tongue to tongue.
Yeah.
That's one step above. Yeah, that's right. So face to face, and then below that is phone call, which there's at least some vibrational element there. Like you can,
just like, the FaceTime is can be really one of the pleasant aspects.
I feel like I guess I don't know if it's an intermediary. I feel like the purity of a phone call. I like the purity of a phone call.
You're not distracted by this other sense.
Yes.
It's like, I'm talking.
That because you can at least focus more on the like the tonal content of speech. Because the thing that I find, I don't mind, Skyping and so on, but the thing that I find that the technology hasn't really nailed is that it's not actually a surrogate, because you never can actually look each other in the eyes. You actually can't get eye contact.
Because you're looking at the screen.
You're looking at the screen, which is not where the camera is. So
maybe we need a camera where the camera
exactly. Yes.
is in the eyes.
Exactly.
No matter where the eyes go.
This is like a level of technology which might come, but at the moment it's not adequate, because effectively you're looking at the screen and they're looking at their screen, but the camera is not aligned with either of your eyes.
Yeah.
So you actually can't really look at the person.
So right now, Dave's actually on a work trip, and you're the new technology right now. You're this what do they call it?
Avatar.
The thing that's the hologram. You're the hologram, FaceTime hologram.
Yeah, that's right. Look, one of the reasons why podcasts, I think, particularly you can tell the difference between a face-to-face podcast where the people are present with each other and one that's happening over the phone.
Like when someone's like just woken up.
There's a quality
woken up in like, LA, and the other person's in like Sydney. And they're like, hey, how you going there? Like, you can tell they just didn't want. They're like, fuck, how long ago did I book this thing? Hey, let's talk about it.
So to the extent, and the reason that I love podcasts and ones that happen in person, in particular long form ones like this very thing that's happening now, is that a recording of what's happening is valuable for us because we're having the conversation. And to the extent that you're listening in as a listener to other people's conversations, the quality of the conversation that they're having is based on the presence, so listening to people on a phone call is not going to be as interesting in terms of like a long form discussion, unless it's, obviously you can have parts of conversations, you want to edit together into some like broader story.
Yeah.
That's fine. but the hierarchy of communication goes face-to-face, the gold standard. Phone call is like, for me, it's second. And then you have, somewhere in there you have your FaceTimes and so on, which is nice. FaceTime and stuff is particularly good for like looking at kids. Like, so we've got our 9-month-old daughter, Grace. She's adorable. And, my parents can't drive over here every day. So, like...
They just want to look at her.
Yeah, that's right. Because she's adorable. And that's great. That's a good... it satisfies... Because she can't speak yet either. That's the thing. So she can't get on the phone and be like... Hello.
Yeah, sure.
And then below that, And so there are vast gulfs between these stages. So face-to-face, there's a vast gulf to a phone call.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of other interferency things. And as good as our technology is, it can't really capture all the nuance. There's no body language. Yep. And then when you get down to text, it's like smoke signals or something. It's like it's
like fax machine.
Yeah, that's right. Because
I'm gonna send you a love fax.
Yeah, because the written word is a beautiful form of expression, but it's
not when it's trying to be something else.
Yeah, that's right. When it's something that you have time to craft, and when when it's something that it's like in a transactional intermediary type space, it's very inadequate. And so, as I was getting back to the cultural relativism thing, or the personal
of how you post your personal stuff.
So I look at someone's venting their spleen, and I think, I wouldn't do that. I'm glad I don't have to do that. I don't judge you for doing that, but I'm concerned socially. So it's kind of hard to have like a detachment, which is that I don't think you're doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it would be preferable for everybody if you had a better outlet than this, and for your own sake, with no judgment. It's a complex set of emotions to have, because I feel like when you do start to substitute, like internet conversations and people commenting on your Facebook and
for actual connection.
The terrible trap that is being set for everybody is that effectively these platforms are designed to trap people's attention. And so dealing with emotional turmoil in text is something that is going to be a huge time sink. And so it's actually your contribution and your like way of dealing with this emotionally in this technology is actually in some sense going to perpetuate.
Yeah.
It's
not only is it not helping, it's actually going to make it worse in the long run.
Yeah, that's right. And that's just by the design of the system.
Yeah. It's interesting, like you're talking about the texting and the replacement of... I was talking to a friend the other day who has been going through this, without going too far into it, but essentially going through the whole long distance in different time zone, like in vastly different time zone, trying to coordinate conversations in a romantic relationship. When I was speaking to them, I was talking pretty lightly about, not too long ago, not too many decades ago, like if your partner, the person you were seeing, went away for 4 months, they were away for 4 months, and we didn't have this option to, every time you like, oh, I miss them, just pick up a thing and send them something. So you actually had time to miss them, and why do I miss them, and what about them do I miss, and I can't wait to have that again, or do I trust them? I do really trust them. No, I don't trust them. This sucks. I might have to tell them I don't trust them when I get back, as opposed to, we're scrolling on things and where are they? And
then judging by response time, how busy they are.
Response time and expectation and sending it. And, one person getting home from a night out in fucking Barcelona and then like being like, hey, I'm a bit tired, gonna go to bed. And the other person being like, oh, didn't even put any effort into your message, knowing full well if the situation was reversed, that person would be like, oh, you don't even respect my freedom. It's and that's what I'm saying is like, removed from that would have just been like hey, that's what I said to them. I said, I think that it should be more socially acceptable for people without it seeming like you're rejecting or pushing someone away socially, to actually implement like social restrictions on relationships that are going really well with social media. So don't just block people because you broke up with them.
Yeah.
You know, say, hey, this is going really well. We're about to have a month apart. I think it's a good idea that we don't communicate, because then we can really allow ourselves the space to be independent human beings, come back together with our experience. Imagine how much we have to tell each other, how good that catch up will be, as opposed to every day, oh, they saw it. Oh, but they didn't. No.
Yeah, well, it's such an interesting moment in our history, because that experience, you know, is now something that would be like a strange and arduous thing to organize, and would require like an immense level of pre-commitment to say, hey, we're not gonna, let's actually, you know, take a break from texting each other every day, you know, for a significant period of time, because it's so, you know, as little as 30 years ago, 20 years ago, that would have been.
You'd have to know the.
You didn't have a choice.
You'd have to know the hotel someone was staying at.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so we're living through. You know, it's when you're talking about etiquette and these little elements of human behavior, we just have no idea what we're doing. I actually read something. I read something recently. I think it was on Twitter, which is like, can you believe people are going to look at like the way that we look at the internet, the way that we engage with the internet, and in 20 years' time, it's going to be like how people look at smoking in the 50s, where everyone was just like, you know, like, give them to kids, light them up, whatever, they're good for you. And it's like, can you believe that in the 90s and the early noughties, we just let people go on the internet? Like no Surgeon General warning, like just here you go, like go for it. Yeah. It's like there's a real sense in which there's a cost to be paid for every advance in technology, and the cost that we're paying, I guess, for example, for motor vehicles, you know, amazing way to get around. And guess what? When like millions of people do it en masse every day for like half a century, shit gets fucked. Like we're destroying the environment. It's like, so now we can go places more quickly than our ancestors ever dreamed possible, and that's cool. But it's creating a kind of catastrophe that is going to have to either result in a massive consciousness change, which, you know, based on my assessment of like everybody's readiness, considering how easily we can all just like get swept up in just get swept up in these vortexes of rage and emotional turmoil on the internet now. The fact that we've created these powerful technologies that use buried sunlight, you know, we're talking about fossil fuels are effectively like just time-based storage of sunlight. You know, so millions and millions of years of plants living and dying and getting crushed by rocks and other plants to form gases, and that we're just like burning them at a rate of knots, which is totally unsustainable, completely. And at the same time that we're realizing that's a huge problem, we've got like another layer of technology, which is like, hey, we can talk to each other at any time we like. And we're just all starting to realize, you know what? Like a significant proportion of us are fucking crazy. Like, so that's maybe not a good idea, particularly when you add other layers of like the incentives that we've created around the technologies, that the makers of these apps want us to stay on these things for as long as possible.
Look how many likes you're going to get.
They want us to stay on
People going to like it.
Yeah, and really the thing that actually is incentivized by these programs is people staying on there for hours, and people stay engaged with something way more because they're enraged than because they're filled with love, you know? You don't, if you are in arduous love and you are feeling the most blissful emotions, it's very likely that you're not on the internet.
Yeah.
Because if you feel that way, then you're going to log off Facebook. Because if you're fulfilled and you're feeling spiritually complete,
Yeah.
so
Maybe listening to music you love might be like potentially one of the few things on that column,
that's I feel like you can carve out if we just carved out the things the internet does well, will all be for the better. So being able to summon whatever song you want, that's amazing. That's beautiful. Let's keep that. Being able to communicate, like podcasts, phenomenal. They're great. And in fact,
some of them.
So
I've been recommended some.
This one, not this one. I don't know.
What are we doing? What are we doing? I got no shoes on. This is not a podcast. What kind of fucking podcast is this?
If you're listening to this afterwards, Marty has been shoving his feet towards the camera.
Yeah.
Anyway,
no shoes, and I'm gonna own it. I'm not wearing any underwear, so.
So, the Spotifys and the music services, the YouTubes,
your Napsters,
the podcasts, music, and video, right? So YouTube is kind of its own like little realm that is complicated.
Yes.
But in general, you might say it's good, but there's like a lot of layers there, which is like algorithmic nonsense.
YouTube. That's a whole nother thing.
Let's not. We won't even get into it. But I feel like that the actual one of the problems that is even within those things that are good is the numeric, like the kind of the quantification of all of those systems. So on YouTube, you can see how many views,
and then you can be like, why would I watch the thing that's got 10 views?
That's right.
Why wouldn't I watch the thing that's already got validation?
It's clearly
better because more people.
Clearly better.
Oh, you mean someone just paid for it to be seen more?
But so that's why I love podcasting in particular, because there's no play count next to any podcast. So there might be...
Really?
No, there's no play counts. So if you go on, certain apps might have them, but if, like, for example, Apple's iTunes, the podcasts app doesn't, like, when you play a podcast, you don't have no idea. If you're downloading like a really popular one, you can assume that millions of people.
But how do you know it's popular?
Well, but so there's ranks. There's all there is like there's ranks of popular podcasts.
Yeah.
But you don't
like the charts of the podcast.
That's right. There's charts. So there's charts of like top podcasts.
Should have done my research.
But in terms of individual episodes, they don't display how many like how many listens each episode has. And I think that's actually wonderful because
people make up their own mind.
Because also some of my favorite podcasts are utterly obscure, will never be on a chart anywhere. But in terms of if you have like a decent enough production values, or even if you don't, who cares? But your podcast sits alongside Rogan's or like whoever is huge, Planet Money, whatever, pick the hugest podcast. And if you have sufficient enough, if you like do the thing well, then people have the potential to appreciate it just as much as a hardcore history or whatever. If you're bringing something that you're bringing something interesting with your thoughts and your
and if you don't have a really annoying voice, I feel like you could have all the information and all the vibe in the world.
That's true. But I would say that Duncan Trussell is like the counterexample. I don't know if you've heard of Duncan Trussell, but
that name sounds familiar.
He's a comedian, and his voice is. I say this as a huge fan of him. His voice is awful. He's like the Bob Dylan of just saying words. It's very, very great.
I do know that name. I probably would know the guy.
He kind of, it's like really crazy. Like it's like kind of tight, but very American. And he's like, but his voice is awful, but he's a very lovely man.
Yeah, sure.
And you can get a lot, I dispute that even vocal, like the worst excesses of vocal fry and vocal awfulness can be overcome by just a genuine heart and willing to express nice things. So, so those are the things that I think you can carve out and say these things are good. The idea that podcasts are not numerically compared, I think makes them better, makes that system, makes that process better. because you're not constantly second guessing yourself, well, like, why would I listen to this unpopular podcast as opposed to the one with millions of views? Now, that's not to say that the charts themselves don't drive, like, you know, the growth of the ones that are already on the charts. And so there's...
Yeah, I'm sure there's a system to do that.
But even so, like something like Vimeo that doesn't really have... You can find the play counts, but it's not like right there. And so the closer that we can get to something that's not quantized, and I'm actually very interested at the idea that like Facebook and Instagram are removing the ability to see like the like count of...
Yeah, I noticed that recently. It said like it's like the last person that liked it and others.
That's right.
And then also like one thing I did like that they took off was on Facebook events, you can't just see who's going. Like it's like you can only see if your friends, the friends of yours that are going.
Right.
But you can't just like scroll through the hundreds of people going to something. And
yeah, I haven't really kept pace with everything that's all the changes that have been made. But effectively, the real core of what we're getting to is just
be human now.
We need to kind of realize what is this stuff for, and the less stuff that happens on the internet, the better. It's a great place to share things and to host content, but don't put your heart there. Don't put your emotions there for them to be processed. I feel like the best you use it as a platform to connect to communities, and it's a great way to connect with people in the real world. That's the way I feel.
Yeah, I completely
so
agree with that.
The best parts of the internet are as like a museum for culture, and the best types of museums are ones that aren't based on hey, look at all this popular shit. It's like remember that movie, it's not a museum but a zoo. Do you remember that movie Fierce Creatures? Yes.
With John Cleese and what's his name? Kevin Kline, is it?
Yes.
He's such an underrated actor.
Yeah, definitely.
I think he's so good. But they have the zoo, and then this is funny. So the zoo, you know how in this film it's got a lot of the Monty Python cast, and it's like a zoo that's going to close down. So these hotshots come in and try and save the zoo by zhuzh it up with all these sponsorships.
Yeah.
I was for my disability job, we took a disability group out to the new Sydney Zoo out in Mount Druitt. And I kid you not, I believe it was the giraffe is sponsored by McDonald's.
Wow.
I was like,
yeah.
Oh
brought to you by Macca's. Well, it's like you can't eat it.
Oh, you know what? No, sorry. I take that back. It was Coca-Cola.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, it's I find that
who knew that a Python movie was actually like the equivalent of like 1984, you know, where they're just like predicting.
There's ideas that I've had about advertising. I've had nightmares, and I'm slightly reluctant to share this.
Like Doors Plus.
No. It's not quite. It's actually far, far worse than that. It wasn't specific advertising. So the concept, as I have just said, I hesitate to share this, but I'm convinced that my popular is unpopular enough and will remain unpopular enough that no advertising executive will get horrific ideas, or they're either working on this already. But the dream was basically that the advertising companies had somehow figured out a way to advertise in the sky. So you would wake up and it was like the entire sky was a Coca-Cola ad. So it was like a red, and that was what determined the day. So it's like, oh, today's a Coca-Cola day. It's like a red day. And then the next week it would be like, oh, now it's Sprite or IBM or whatever. And so just like the entire blue had been replaced. So yeah, anyway, that's terrifying. The idea that... Yeah,
maybe once there's a dome, they'll advertise on the dome.
It was just that, I don't know that the technology was disclosed in the dream, but it's like some network of satellites or some shit. Anyway, point being that I'm terrified of advertising. The thing that I've seen recently for ads, which amuses me, are those, they have those giant billboards that are like digital, so they can change the content dynamically. And one of them was like the kind of, it's like the equivalent of like an unsee this type ad, but you know, like you saw this, so you know, and the quote, like it was advertiseordie.com.
Shit.
So it's like advertise your business here, blah blah blah, like it's the most effective, blah blah blah.
It's a threat and a website.
And then and then the actual advertise or die. And I was thinking, I choose death. Like I would prefer, if those are my choices.
Do you think that's a way of like if you were actually threatening someone, not that you would, but if you were like threatening someone in plain sight of like police officers, it would be a way to get away with it. Like you'd be like, I'm going to fucking kill you.com.
That is great. No, so I was just promoting my website. And then like if they put you in the paddy wagon, you just quickly go on GoDaddy and buy the URL for the threat you just made.
Just already have it pre-bought,
okay.
Just in case. But that's the only way. You're only allowed to threaten people with that sentence. Not that you'd want to threaten people.
I'm a huge fan of buying URLs on a whim. Have I told you my IinventedCeremonies.com story?
No.
Okay, so this might be a good story to wrap things up.
Yeah.
This has been a great chat.
Yeah.
And I definitely enjoy the old invest in a URL. So this is my story about investing in one. So this story is exactly a year old because I did it on New Year's Eve last year. So I was on acid and I was hanging out with my beautiful Annie. And I was coming up with, you know, I was just having a whole avalanche of ridiculous thoughts. And during this wonderful New Year's experience, so Annie was pregnant, New Year's Eve 2019 or 2018.
You sly dog.
She was pregnant, and it was just like we were having this weird shit. So Annie was in the bath, and I could see all of the ripples coming.
And you were on the ceiling.
Yeah. So. Because my senses were heightened as they tend to get, so I could see the ripples coming off Annie's body, I could see the ripples coming off my body, and I could see the ripples that were emerging from Annie's belly that were coming from Grace in utero as she was kicking, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had this candlelit bath and it was all like felt very sacred. And I was saying, this is like very ceremonial. It feels like a ceremony. And then suddenly everything...
I can see when this is going.
And see, everything was so ceremonial that like every ridiculous little thing that I did was part of the ceremony. So when I got out of the bath, I like shook my foot and it was like, well, that's part of the ceremony. And then I started thinking about how ceremonies are a really good business. So, you know, I'm a wedding celebrant.
Yeah.
And I enjoy hosting things. And then I was thinking, well, you know, yeah, ceremonies are really good business. It's like a ceremony is just a list of things that happens in a place, really. Like that's all that it is. So it's like if you can like somehow convince people to charge, if you can just like charge heaps of money to run ceremonies, it's like you got it made. Because all it is like turning up, amplifying yourself and having like a list of things that happens, and then everybody understands what's going to happen next. That's all a ceremony is. And so I was like, you know, developing this kind of ceremony character, but it's like, if you want to like sell ceremonies like really good, the best thing is that if you've got to have been doing ceremonies for ages, you know what I mean? Like you can't be new to the ceremony game. It can't be your first ceremony. Nobody's going to hire you for the first ceremony. So you need some kind of cred, some kind of street cred. And so my street cred was that I invented ceremonies. Like I was the dude, like nobody was doing ceremonies, bro. I was the first guy that came up with ceremonies. Yeah. How do you prove that? Well, IinventedCeremonies.com. Yeah. And so then I bought that URL while on acid.
Yes.
Which is actually quite a difficult task.
On acid.
Yeah, to buy a URL.
Yeah.
You've got to like remember your logins and
I love more than that story. I love the shift from the romantic sacred ceremonial to like in the space of 2 minutes you going on this tangent wave. So it's like this romantic, like sacred ceremony. And then 2 minutes later, you're just like on the computer. And she's like, well, that didn't last long, did it?
Well, in my defense, I'm condensing the timeline. I didn't like jump out of the bath.
Yeah, it sounded like you were like, it was so sacred and ceremonial. And then you just like got the laptop, you're like, wait, I've got it.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, I thought we were doing a baby thing here, but
No. Well, so during this process where I was like, one of the other insights from that night was that, because Annie, was obviously sober. And one of the insights from that night is that, like, someone who's sober will really only put up with you if you're doing something nice for them. So I was rubbing Annie's feet, and I was like,
that's a good theory.
I was apologizing for all of the nonsense that I was talking, and I was like, people will put up with anything. Doesn't matter how crazy you're talking. If you're rubbing their feet, it's way more tolerable. So
yeah,
that was the other takeaway from that night.
I invented rubbing feet. Get it?
Yeah, that's right.
Don't steal it.
Marty. Well, I'm looking forward. I think this is probably the first of many chats that we'll have.
Yeah, we can do it.
I think that there's much more to say.
Regular guest.
I would love that if you're part of the constellation of regular people on this program. So thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for anyone that was listening.
Works it out. And yeah, so this is available, pupafire.com. Oh, we should say
Feb 1st?
Yes, that's right. Saturday the 1st of February, there is a fundraiser gig for...
Can you get a thing on the screen?
Fireys.
Beep, beep.
Yeah,
link, flash.
Yeah, you gotta remember that this
right now.
You also gotta remember this goes out as audio, Marty. So you're currently like pointing, but if anyone's listening to the audio, they're not seeing you point.
One of those guys.
They won't have like a flashing thing that I can put on the screen because it'll just be in their
just
car.
Just put it in the sky.
That's right.
Fuck, that's a good line to wrap up on.
Just put it in the sky. Yeah. So pupafire.com to see all the details and the tickets for that. And yeah, so come along Saturday, 1st of February. It's an amazing lineup of Sydney artists, all raising money for the firefighters who lost their lives. And there's accounts that have been set up by the Rural Fire Service, and we're aiming to raise at least $2,000, if not more. So if you're in Sydney and you can come along. Otherwise, you can also just you can contribute to the campaign. It's at pupafire.com. I'm contributing all the proceeds of sales of my record, which I'm putting out. So that's all part of it. So head along there. Thanks again, Mr. Marty Bright. Do all the things, press all the buttons. You can find Marty at instagram.com/martyisbright.
Yes.
And facebook.com/comedy Marty Bright.
Yeah, that's right. And check me out on there for a comedy gig January 9th with Steve Hofstetter from the USA. He'll be donating $5 US from every one of his tickets to the RFS. And Jan 12th in Newcastle, Words Flow, donating to Hunter Wildlife Rescue as well.
Put it in the sky.
Put it in the sky.
Kisses. See you later, good people. Ciao.